Welcome everyone to the value of costing in changing business environments with our guest speaker, Matthew Smith. I'm Sue Khwaja. I am IMA's Business Development Manager, and I am the moderator for today's session. I would like to quickly review some important information about today's presentation. First, we encourage you to submit presenter questions at any time by using the Q&A icon. The speaker will do their best to get as many audience questions at the end of the presentation. If you have any trouble viewing polled questions, please refresh your browser, which should correct this type of connection issues. Should you experience any technical difficulty, please click on the help icon at the bottom of your screen for technical support. In order to earn CPE credit today, you must view the full duration of the presentation and respond to the poll questions. At this time, I would like to introduce our presenters. Our presenter with us today, we have Matthew Smith. As the President and CEO of 3C Software, Matthew sets the strategic direction of the organization. With more than 25 years of progressively responsible experience with 3C, Matthew has been actively involved in all areas of business, including professional services, sales and marketing, support, and strategic planning. Matthew is consistently recognized for his expertise in developing and implementing enterprise cost and profitability. He has been an invited speaker at many industry-specific conferences and trade shows, and is an industry expert in a number of trade and technical publications. Please join me in welcoming Matthew.
All right. Hey, guys. This is, as she just said, Matthew Smith. I want to welcome you to ACE 2021. Just quickly before we jump to the next slide, I had to say, it was some months ago when we were first invited to the conference and there was a lot of planning going on. I had hoped that we would be face-to-face by now, but obviously that's not the case. I'm very excited that everybody's taken the time, an environment where everybody is sort of zoomed out, as I say, right? That you've still taken the time to attend a presentation like this. I really do appreciate it. I put a good bit of time and energy into these kinds of presentations, certainly as I would if we were face-to-face and I was standing at the front of a big room. So I appreciate everybody taking the time to join me. I'm coming to you today from beautiful Atlanta, Georgia in the United States. You can kind of see behind me out my office windows. It's a nice early summer day here in Atlanta, not too hot yet, but nice and sunny for sure. So hope you're having good weather where you are too. Here at 3C Software, I help companies achieve excellence in costing. That's what I'm all about. I'm a cost guy at heart. Spent my entire career in costing, even though I run a technology company today. Costing is a real passion for me, and using costing and costing information to drive profitability is really what my whole career has been about. So today I'm going to talk about the value of costing in changing business environments. That's where we're going to focus today. I'm going to help run the presentation today with really three primary questions. This is what I really hope to present you with and then help you figure out and provide answers to these primary questions. Number one, I want to talk about how the pandemic has changed the role of costing in organizations. Number two, we're going to talk about what are the key enablers to creating a world-class costing process. And then finally, what is a modern costing program? How is it used to improve strategic business strategies? In other words, what's the value if we put this kind of program in place and we buy into it? What's the value I can expect to get out of it? So hopefully these questions and the insight I provide on each of them will give you some ammunition to reflect on your own company's costing capabilities. And then if you decide it's needed, how you can go about improving them. So that's how we're going to focus today. All right, let's jump right in. There's no doubt that the pandemic has greatly affected the role of costing in organizations, but to be honest, that's kind of an easy and sort of obvious statement to make, right? I don't think there's any functional area in any company that can claim they were unaffected by what we've all been through in the past 14 to 16 months. I don't care how back office, removed from operations or removed from customer interfaces you are. If you're in any functional department in any company, you've seen some impact in the last 14 to 16 months. But there is plenty of evidence to support the tremendous effect that this pandemic has had on the costing organization and costing activities. I have read study after study and survey after survey, like the one quoted here, that have confirmed that costing and the related financial practices have not just been impacted, but they've been at the forefront of helping their organizations through this particular crisis. As we continue to recover, there's going to be tremendous continued focus on costing activities and improving what we found weren't working so great when we were in time of pressure during the pandemic. Check out these particular survey numbers. Now, this is a post-pandemic recovery done just earlier this year, so 2021. So, a year after the pandemic started is when this survey was done. And look at how some of the respondents are answering these questions. 66% of people are actively still pursuing cost reduction strategies, right? That's a significant number of people looking to take cost out of their organization. Probably even more exciting or scary, depending on what side of it you're on, 78% of them, almost 80%, claim they've been unable to adjust their costing structure to meet the demand. And as we know, that demand has been all over the place. It might have been really, the demand went away and it was a vacuum where you didn't have any customers, no orders at all for a while. And then it may have slingshot back the other way where you were inundated with more orders than you could deliver. But being able to adjust your cost structure to meet that, 78% of companies said we're absolutely unable to do it, right? And then there are still 66% that are going after cost reductions of 10% or more. And to me, a 10% reduction in cost in companies as mature as we are today, that's significant, right? So these are companies that are already sort of running lean anyway, and for them to be looking for 10% reduction is quite substantial. So these results from this survey show you that, hey, there's a lot of focus and pressure on costing and costing activities, right? The processes that enable these targets, right? If we're going to achieve, 10% reduction, if we're going to be able to, dynamically adjust our cost structure based on demand, right? And if we're going to pursue cost reduction, the processes that enable that, one of the things the pandemic exposed for us is they are woefully lacking, to say the least, right? We are an area, we being in costing, right? Financial activities and costing specifically, where manual costing processes were greatly exposed as soon as we transitioned to remote work. Spreadsheets, unfortunately, are still the leading tool in our discipline, but their disconnected nature from other systems was highly exposed. The spreadsheets and other non-integrated systems exposed the lack of transparency and controls. Just as a quick aside, I do a lot of work in SOX kind of compliance and regulatory control and reporting over costing data, right? Costing data in public organizations feeds right into financial reports, and it should be protected like any other financial data. And when I tell you the story after story of the spreadsheets flying across the internet to public, IP service providers, to home addresses and on home machines and in coffee shops, and where that data has been and where it might have been exposed, I don't even want to begin to understand what the potential liabilities were, but they were highly exposed during this pandemic for sure, right? And of course, the lack of sufficient resources hit costing as hard as any other area. I find in my companies, good costing resources were already lean and hard to come by. And then some of those that were lost during the pandemic because they just elected to do something different, went to, live in a treehouse somewhere or live on the beach or whatever they did. We lost even more resources, which made it, number one, our jobs become more inefficient, and now we have fewer resources to do that inefficient job. Was just a perfect storm for disaster, right? So this is what I found during the pandemic. So let's talk a little bit on how we fix the problems and we prepare for the next big disruption. We've all got to agree now there's going to be big disruptions, whether it's a pandemic, hopefully not, or something else comes along. There are going to be big disruptions. And how can we prepare to not go through the same pains and the same lessons that we were just coming out of now? I'm going to suggest to you that we do this by focusing on two things. We focus on the people and the processes. First and foremost, we have to identify and eliminate the all too popular single owner spreadsheets, right? The one where when the owner's not available, the data's not available. Those spreadsheets with highly valuable, highly important data is still rampant in even the most mature of organizations, right? And I'm not talking about routine accounting activities like closing the books, AP, AR, all of that stuff's been highly automated and gotten out of Excel spreadsheets, but it remains the key issue for what I think is the most valuable of accounting activities, which is strategic costing activities, right? So we fixed all of one set of problems with automated closes and virtual closes, and we're patting ourselves on the back, and then the activities that are of real value, we're still woefully lacking. We're going to come back and talk about that a little bit more, right? We also have to focus on the processes that are in place or not in place more often that enable advanced costing. These includes things like modeling capabilities that help predict future outcomes. When the pandemic first hit and volumes and order loads were changing dramatically inside of a company, this was the number one thing that was needed. How can I rapidly model what my costs are going to be with this new volume and mixed set of products we're being asked to deliver to our customers? Also being able to dynamically flex certain things like cash flow, capacity, and other capital requirements, supplier requirements based on that rapidly moving demand is very important. And then just the simple old-fashioned practice of analyzing costs to determine which products are no longer profitable, not only at the gross margin level, but at net profit levels. I mean, that's really the role of cost accounting, yet that's been kicked to the back burner because of all these other fires we're are constantly chasing and trying to put out. But good old-fashioned cost analysis and root cause analysis for high cost is something that is an important process that's got to be ironed out, put in place as a repeatable process. I want to take a minute and ask a poll question. And remember, you guys do two things for me. Number one, participate in the polls. That's how we know you stayed here and you attended and you get the CPE credits. But do one favor for me. After you select your answer to this poll question, be sure you hit the submit button. Just selecting it doesn't submit your answer, but after you do it, hit the submit button and we will, and your answer will be submitted. But here's the poll question. Which department, we're talking about finance and costing, but which department in your organization would you say has the biggest impact on decisions your organization makes? Is it finance, right? Is it technology, IT, sales, maybe marketing? Are you a marketing product-driven company? Or is it product development engineering? Maybe you're a highly developed product and it's engineering that drives it. You guys take just a moment and let's see where we think our department, finance and accounting, has the biggest influence. I'll give you a minute, guys, a minute to make your selection and hit that submit button. Don't forget. While I'm waiting on the results to come in, I'll quickly comment. I see some good questions already queuing up in our Q&A box. That's phenomenal. I'm looking forward to getting to those. So keep submitting questions as you have them, and we'll save plenty of time at the end to get to those questions, right? So I see a couple of you have already put some very good questions in the Q&A box. Please do that, and we'll get to those. That's exciting topics for conversation. Thanks for the feedback so early in the presentation. Okay, a few more of you have not submitted yet. Come on, we're going to get up to at least a magic 90% here. Which department in your organization has the biggest impact on the decisions your organization makes? All right, let's take a look at the answers, right? Now, this is interesting, right? This is what, as a finance, accounting, costing guy, I like to see, right? Maybe it's just that I've got a big financing audience and our egos are coming out here. But if you look at these results, you see that most of us believe that finance has the biggest impact on the decisions your organization makes. I absolutely believe this wholeheartedly. I think what we report and the feedback that we give back to the leaders of the organization, that data that comes out of finance, absolutely should have the biggest impact on the decisions the organization makes. And one of the things I'm going to go on to talk about today is a modern costing program. And we're going to talk about the value that that costing program can have in this exact poll question, right? How can we have the biggest impact on the decisions that our organization are making, right? That's fascinating, interesting for sure. All right, let's move past the poll. We can come back to it later if somebody has some questions. I see some Q&A queuing up there, so that's phenomenal. Let's talk a little bit more about the people and processes that I talked about earlier that are involved with the costing activities. Without a doubt, finance leaders, and this includes controllers, cost accountants, cost analysts, they can deliver, without a doubt, real tangible value that improves the bottom line. But what's different than the past is that this value is not going to be found in reporting of the transactional historical information. That certainly has its place. We do have to report what happened, what we did. But the real value, I'm talking about the value that can affect the bottom line in the future, not explain what happened to the bottom line last month, is going to be proactive, forward-looking, predictive insights. That's going to be the key to really add value and affect the bottom line. And there are three specific areas which we can do this. One of it is going to be enhanced information for better decision making, right? This is dynamic modeling, right, that we talked about earlier. If this scenario is happening, can I instantly say, if that scenario happens, here's what the expected results are? Can I run a dynamic, flexible model? Oh, that particular set of volume and mix, here's what it's going to do to our capacity levels, and here's what it's going to do to our raw material supply needs. Can I provide that enhanced information for decision making? I'm talking enhanced coming out of accounting, because giving somebody the standard non-enhanced information that we're used to giving, which is, hey, what's the product cost? Oh, here's the cost per SKU, right? That's what comes out of costing, right? You just give them a product cost. That's not the value information I'm talking about. I'm talking enhanced decision making that comes from dynamic modeling. We can also increase the speed in which we do this. We can report near real-time data. I'm going to talk about that a little later as well, to the key decision maker, so they're not always waiting to get the answers from us. And finally, we can always improve our productivity and efficiency within our department. To be honest, this third area, it's important, but it's not one that I would focus on. I think finance, especially the operational finance, costing people are already as lean and as efficient as they need to be. But certainly any department, any company, we can always do it better, have better tools, be more efficient, be less reliable on a key person. That's all about increased productivity and efficiency. And certainly we can find some area there. Hey, let's do one more poll question. I think these are kind of interesting and get you guys thinking instead of me just talking all the time. What is the primary role of costing information in your organization? Think about that for a minute. All the cost information that's available, how is it used? Is it used to support business strategy and strategic decisions? Do we drive product and service cost reductions, internally focused, operational? Is it used to support pricing and contract negotiations? A lot of people, the cost plus world, you got to have that cost before you can price it. Are we using it in a variance method to monitor operational performance? Are we providing visibility for cost management, cost reduction initiatives? Or is it simply supporting financial reporting? To me, this list is most sophisticated at the top to least sophisticated at the bottom. Some in the middle could go rank one or two up, but in general, that's how this list goes. Supporting financial reporting, that's valuing inventory, calculating a cost of goods sold. That's a use of cost information that's important. But in your organization, what's the primary role of that costing information? Give you guys just a minute, and I'll remind you once again, after you select your little radio button, be sure to hit the submit button, right? So you get the answer submitted. Wow, we got some great questions coming in the Q&A session. I'm going to make sure I save more time than normal, right? I love these kinds of good conversations about costing. How exciting, right? All right, a couple more minutes. Got just over 100 people participating today, so I appreciate the high level of participation. Everybody seems to be submitting answers. Let's take a look at the poll results and see where we land. Oh, this is actually very positive to me, right? What I think is the highest ranking, primary, most valuable use of cost information is where you guys have scored yourselves the highest, right? Supporting business strategy and strategic decisions is phenomenal. Supporting pricing and contract negotiations is quite obvious. really a strategic goal and a business strategy is to achieve a particular margin. So supporting pricing and contract negotiations is a big part of achieving that. So those two really do go hand in hand in companies that are sort of cost plus and not letting the market set theirs. And I'm a little disappointed that we're not providing more visibility for cost management initiatives, right? I mean, cost reduction starts with knowing where we're spending the money and where costs are high, right? So maybe that's a room for opportunity. And then very few see support financial reporting as the primary role, right? Now, certainly you're using it to do it, but it's not the primary, which I think is a good news, right? I think that's kind of routine and sort of ordinary use of the data, and you should be doing it. But I'm glad to see that we've got such a high percentage that are using cost information in such a highly valuable way, right? Let me show you results from other people along with another question that was asked of that same survey at the same time, because I think this is very interesting, right? Here is results from a recent Deloitte survey. Notice that the areas that are valued as the highest, right, which is supporting business strategy, where you guys scored yourself as, is also, however, the one area that needs the most improvement, that top line bar, right? So the orange part of the bar says, yes, we think that that's the most important top role of costing information. And oh, by the way, that's the area where we need the most improvement. In fact, the relationship of what's most valuable, that's the orange bars, to what area needs the most improvement, it remains the same relationship through every single category of cost usage, right? The only exception is at the very bottom, traditional financial reporting. It's thought that it needs the least improvement. So I guess one of the things we're saying here about ourselves is we're very good at doing what matters the least, we could say, right? Certainly we have to do it. It's financial reporting. It's required of us. But I find that these results just exciting and interesting that, yes, we recognize it's the most important. And oh, by the way, we're not good at it. That's the area we need the most improvement. So there's lots of room for improvement in organizations, right? Let's move on and talk a little bit about those processes that I've talked about earlier, right? Here are a few typical business processes that should be routine for any modern costing program. What I mean by these, and I've only picked 5, I could pick 15 or 20 probably, and some will apply to different industries differently. If you're a manufacturer versus a service provider, if you're a wholesale distributor, something could be slightly off here. But these are 5 areas where I think a modern costing program is expected to perform day in and day out. Number 1, product and customer profitability. This enables your organization to allocate the assets according to the greatest return, as well as rationalize the offering portfolio. Those products and services that don't make money, that are not profitable, we need to be weeding them out of there. This identifies where investments should be made in customers to find growth opportunities. Hey, we make a lot of product with this product at this customer. Why can't we chase that and grow that particular business? But if you think about particular product or SKU by customer location, by channel, how did we get it there? That's the ultimate level of detail that I think we need to be routinely being able to provide our business leaders with so they can drive the business and where we can add the most value. Another one is in this area of channel management, supply chain, logistics, cost to deliver, cost to distribute, cost to serve. All of this is all of the areas that we spend money outside of making the product or service or sourcing the product or service. And it's a big part of profit leakage for a lot of people, right? So accurately measuring performance beyond gross margin and by the specific respective distribution channel. We need to be able to routinely deliver that as a modern costing program. Of course, we need to maintain active, just classic cost management. This one I have in the center because to me, this is the heart of costing and cost management, exposing root causes for high cost activities, directing the organization on how to remedy those, doing ROI analysis on, hey, if we put this new machine or this new process in place, this is the payback we can expect to lower overall cost and how long would it take. And then being able to show very accurate cost at a SKU level by manufacturing route or sourcing flow path, not just an average cost for every SKU. I can't make strategic decisions with that. Tax and transfer pricing is an area that's a little more automated, right? Because the rules tend to be repeatable and predictable, but having effective and automated policies for transfer pricing centralizing tax administration and using pre-built processes is an aspect of a modern costing program, but one that can be highly automated, but certainly adds high value. And then pricing and revenue strategy, right? Informing product pricing decisions based on achievable or desired profit. And this has to start all the way back at product inception, right? When we're back at the product lifecycle management, at the product invention level, this is when we need to talk about revenue, right? Think about that. You're back trying to invent a new product. The revenue, the achievable revenue strategy needs to be baked in at that point in time, or it's going to be too late by the time you get there and you're trying to turn it into a profitable profit. And this certainly is not an exclusive list. There's a lot more expected from a modern costing organization in this post-pandemic world, but these are the big deliverables that I expect you should be able to make. You should be able to deliver to your organization. So as we wrap up this first topic here and move on to the second and the third, here's what I can say. The pandemic has certainly changed the role of costing in a fundamental way. It's exposed the people and the process limitations within a whole lot of companies. I've had lots of companies say, boy, I didn't know we relied on that spreadsheet for that, or that was so wrapped up in that person in that set of spreadsheets, right? That's unfortunate, but it highlighted that. I think it has changed the ranking of what's important and what needs to be improved with costing data. And finally, it's proven that having the right cost data can directly drive decisions that affect the bottom line. I've got example after example of clients that have said, hey, we use this information and this is the decision we made. We shut down this plant, we moved one of those shifts to this plant and went 24/7 instead of 2 shifts, and we moved all the production here. And I mean some real physical movements of operations were a result of good, valuable costing insight. And that was recognized during the pandemic, and now it's going to become expected and routine. All right, let's move to the next topic here, which is what are the elements of establishing a modern costing program? If we agree that costing is an important, valuable capability, what can we do to achieve that top right quadrant sort of leader status, right? Let's take a look at a modern costing program and what it might look like in your organization. So the exact capabilities, kind of like the slide I talked about earlier, are going to vary a little bit depending on the organization. If you're a commodity manufacturer, a manufacturer of commodity goods, it may be all about measuring and analyzing actual cost to make sure you're hitting the expected cost or the standards, and then reducing them over time because it's a repeatable process and we're making the same product over and over. If you're a wholesale distribution company, the key may be understanding the specific channel delivery costs from sourcing all the way through to final delivery. What is that flow path that optimizes my profitability, right? But at the end of the day, in all types of companies, what you need to be able to answer with confidence is, what is the cost of? And we don't know what that last blank is going to be filled with, but you're going to be expected to answer, what is the cost of this? What is the cost of that? What if we do this? What if we do that? What is the cost of is what you need to be preparing yourself to answer, regardless of what gets filled in the blank. A more detailed version of that question and some examples of how they morph in real life look something like this. What area of the business is helping promote profit and where are we losing? Analyzing your costs from sourcing all the way to final delivery is what's needed, not just the manufacturing cost, not just the freight cost, but the full value stream has got to be analyzed and reported and compared to other flow paths to achieve that same delivery, right? How about this? Where are we pricing based on gross margin and feeling good about our pricing, right? But without consideration for total delivered cost, right? Companies that continue to operate on gross margin analysis alone and everything else is just SG&A are not where it's at in a modern costing program. We need to see full net profit for all products, and is our pricing achieving the required margin at that net profit level? Thirdly, what advantages can we use to lower fixed overhead cost or shared services cost, right? When capacities swing greatly, like I talked about earlier, this is the big area to go after, right? Is, hey, all of a sudden my demand's way off. Can I shift my cost structure? I see companies making decisions now, well, hey, we were going to build that other plant, but do we continue to build that plant or do we go to a toll manufacturer and outsourced manufacturing? Having lived through swings in demand that we just lived through, that will be thought long and hard about. Because before, when we're meeting, thinking about building new capacity, building new plants, what do we study? We study those steady growth charts that have been happening. Say, okay, we've been sourcing, we're giving up margin to our toll manufacturers. Look at that growth, look at that growth. We can afford to build a new plant, and then all of a sudden it plummets to zero, right? That's something that wasn't in our mind before. What is my total exact profit by customer location and by delivery method? Most of my clients can, number one, make a product in multiple places, deliver it to a customer at multiple locations, and do that delivery using different delivery methods. So a product coming out of plant A, going to a specific customer location, using a specific delivery method, what is the profitability of that? That's what I call flow path costing, right? A specific flow path to get it from point A to point B. What does that look like, and how can I optimize that and make it the best for the company? What are the product variants that are improving or reducing profit? Often we see a product that starts out very profitable, but then a feature gets added, or it morphs this way or morphs that way, and before we know it, that product goes from a winner to a loser over time. So that's classic cost accounting analysis. And then where are activities being driven by specific products, but the associated costs are not assigned to that specific product, right? So none of these questions are new to anybody here. I know you've been faced with these, but here's what you have to stop and ask yourself. Are you able to accomplish answering these kinds of questions within your core primary costing system, right? Or do you extract the needed data and turn to Excel, right? I'm going to guess for a lot of people it's the latter, and that's what we're going to talk about, right? How to establish, or what it takes to establish, a modern costing program, right? The components really fall into three primary categories. That's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about the rules, the tools, and the data, right? These are the three areas that we're going to talk about in detail. Let's start out talking about the rules. When I talk about rules, what I'm talking about here is the actual methodology or the logic used to calculate the cost that I'm giving to somebody to make a strategic decision. Too many times I find a peanut butter spread of what should be specific product or service costs being allocated across all products, or the logic that's being used fails to recognize specific activities required for a specific product, service, or customer. The rules found in a modern costing program should not only be accurate and activity-based, but they need to support your real-world situations today. Is that cost answer you're giving me based on today's level of capacity and utilization, or is it the standard that we set some time ago, right? Early in the COVID shutdown days, when this was the big thing. Where are we on capacity level? How are we going to cost? Are we at least covering our cash cost, even though we know volume's way off? And does it make sense to keep running the equipment, keep making these products, or do we take a shutdown? This is real world, and your logic and your rules have to support your current real world situations, right? A modern costing program should also let you re-roll product costs on demand with instant answers. So this delivering of timely results, we can no longer say, yeah, it'll take me 2 days, or I'm going to re-roll the costs overnight, or give me a week to go run that analysis and get back to you, Mr. Business Leader, right? That can't happen. We have to deliver timely results for these questions we're answering. The cost reporting should also include measurable and meaningful KPIs, right? The cost per unit might be valuable for some kind of reporting, but maybe the contribution per machine hour is more important for a particular type of question. Think about that for a minute, right? Gross margin, which is the unit cost from the price, that's valuable. Net profit, after all the SG&A and delivery cost and logistics and distribution costs are taken away. But let's say I'm now at a high demand and I'm cherry picking orders, right? Which products are optimizing my profit per machine hour, because I can only make one product at a time on that machine. That's some very insightful information that was useful when the pendulum swung back the other way midway through the pandemic, and we had high demand for certain products, right? Tissue products, household goods, consumer product goods, things like this. Now we're saying, hey, we can't fill the shelf with all these products. Which products should we be making to maximize this profit and put those on the shelf, right? And then finally, the methodology should be consistent across the whole organization. from all your different plants across your distribution centers through your warehouses. Too many times we find spreadsheets that we think are giving us the same answer out of two like organizations, plant one, plant two. Yeah, I get the same cost per unit, but the logic in each is vastly different and can be very misleading. It's also important that the rules are at the appropriate level of sophistication for the task at hand. While I love super detailed, analytical, theoretical costing methodology, right? I think there's a textbook way to cost everything, sort of bottoms-up engineer's approach. Even though that's there, it's not the most appropriate for every task or every cost element or cost bucket, right? So I oftentimes use this chart to determine sort of which cost methods best fit each component of cost. And then we use it to kind of prioritize which costs are the most important to tackle and which can be ignored to a later time. Ultimately, you get around to assigning all cost in the most accurate level. But at a quick glance, what you can see here, that you can have some direct assignment, direct variable cost, where cost can be easily attributed directly to the product, raw materials, machine cost if you're stamping something out. Those are all very direct assignment cost. But you can go from there all the way down to simple allocations where the cost pool doesn't fluctuate very much with product mix, maybe volume a little bit, but doesn't fluctuate very much. And it's overall a small amount of money. Go chase where the big pools of money are. Whatever the rule, the modern costing program understands the importance of and supports multiple methodologies. You could have direct assignment of cost in some area in the model, and in the same model use some advanced activity-based costing or some other cost pools. Right? So you got to have multiple methodologies and apply them at the right level of value in return for the effort to put it in. Before we jump from the rules to the tools, which is what comes up next, I want to ask you a question about the tools that are there in your organization today, right? Which system serves your organization as your primary costing tool? Is it the ERP system? Is it still a legacy, custom-developed, internally developed application? Is it a modern enterprise-level costing system? Now, that's different than the ERP module. ERP module is the costing module that came with your ERP system. Enterprise-level costing is what I'm hoping all of you achieve one day. Do you have a dedicated enterprise-level cost modeling system? Are you still using spreadsheets, or is there maybe something else that you're using? That's the poll question. Remember, after you choose your answer, hit submit. Now, if I were a betting man, which I'm not, I would put a lot of money in a particular category here that I'm sure everybody looking at the options could agree is going to be the most widely used, right? And it doesn't mean that it's the only one used. Most people have an ERP system and use some spreadsheets and do a little bit of other. But as your primary costing system, let's see where people score themselves here. Couple of more answers coming in. Let's see how we did. ERP and spreadsheets. Yep, that's exactly where I would have scored it. I would have thought that spreadsheets would have scored a little higher, but I'm certain that the way I presented that question, when you think about it, which system serves your primary costing system? The ERP is probably what values inventory, creates cost of goods sold, so you got to count that as primary. If I said which system gives you the most valuable information out of all your costing tools, I'm going to guess spreadsheets might have scored a little higher, but this is good. What this says to me is we have moved off the legacy applications by and large. Unfortunately, a lot of that probably moved into spreadsheets, but we are relying heavily on a standardized ERP module. I'm going to guess probably for standardized cost reporting and cost accounting functionality. Very few people have a dedicated enterprise level costing system. I'm going to talk about that more in this tools section. Very few of you, almost 10% had. And then there's a bunch of us that are still relying on spreadsheets that I don't think will change for a very long time. So let's talk for a minute about the tools, these particular tools that are employed today. Certainly, as we've just said, most companies, if not all, have some version of, if not a new and very modern ERP system. You also have shop floor control systems, process control level. You've got, I'm talking order fulfillment, work order systems. You've also got manufacturing execution, warehouse management systems. All these systems capture a tremendous amount of data, and much of the data is collected and stored in data warehouses, right? But think about this. I'm going to present you with a scenario that could be the question I posed earlier, which was, what is the cost of? Let's run through a quick scenario because this happens all the time for my customers. Let's suppose we're a plastics part manufacturer, right? So we buy resin, we buy it in chip and pellet form, we melt it, we blend it, we extrude it, we inject it, all these kinds of things, and we make plastic parts. Let's say that we suspect that resin prices are going to go up 5% next quarter. I want to know where in this sea of data, right? Everything that's in green here. We just talked about ERP systems, shop floor systems, data warehouses, data lakes. There's a tremendous amount of data. Where in this sea of data can I go to see the new projected resin prices side by side with the existing prices? And oh, by the way, it might be 7%, not 5, or it might be 3%. So that's best case, worst case, most expected case, right? Where can I go to see those prices? And then where can I also go to see, all right, now re-roll all my product costs that use those resins and let me see my new product cost side by side with my existing standard or my last rolled cost, right? Where can I go to find all that? Typically, we cannot find it in anywhere in that green section. Why? Because it's brand new, it's imagined data, right? 5%. I'm just imagining what if it goes up 5%. So now I've got lots of different resins, they go up 5%. That's a new data set, but it's brand new imagined data that doesn't exist anywhere. And it's this new data that the insight gained from using is of such tremendous value, right? Not saying, well, I can tell you what, when they say, what's it going to do to my product cost if resin goes up 5%? If my answer is, well, last month or last quarter, I could tell you what our product costs were. That's not answering the question. The high value, remember we agreed, is forward looking, right? Predictive. What's going to happen if it goes up 5%? Where can I go? So where do we go to do that kind of, we get asked that question all the time if you're a manufacturer. I promise you've been faced with that, right? Where do you go to do it? You got millions of dollars invested in these green systems. I'll tell you where you go. You go to your $59.95 Microsoft Excel, baby. You plug in all the data, you download the existing prices, you write a formula to bump them up 5%. Then you hopefully can go try to find, all right, which products use these resins? Can I simulate a cost roll? So all that effort, all that energy, all that money in these systems, and where do we go to do the most valued activity? You got it, Excel, right? This is the tool situation that we find today, and it's very problematic for costing, and it's not representative of a modern costing organization. Study after study, Gartner rankings, anywhere you look to find this, they all agree that advanced modeling and analytics users are the ones who are best equipped to answer the business questions that truly add value and contribute to the bottom line. Being able to connect financial and operational data in the same model. Some financial data, but at this machine capacity level. That's financial and operational data, right? Creating reports as an end user, being able to mine data, create my own reports and graphics so I can explain to people what's going on, and many others. You see a couple of those here are examples of what you should be able to do with the right tools in a modern costing program. The problem with the existing tools that we talked about earlier, because we talked about everything that was in green and then we talked about spreadsheets, is that they are sort of at opposite ends of the spectrum, right? If you look at this graph, the vertical axis says, system robustness. And what I mean by that is I can go in the system, I can affect a transaction, the environment is secure, it's scalable, I got a whole lot of people in it. So system robustness means it's a mature, sophisticated, enterprise scalable organization. That's high on the vertical axis here. The horizontal axis talks about flexibility, because now I've got new imagined data. Where can I go plug that in? Or where can I do a quick set of mathematical rules that weren't part of my standard rules, but I've been asked what's the cost of that demands that kind of modeling, right? Where can I go do that? If you look here, highly regarded for overall enterprise capability, ERP systems. They rank very high, but by their very nature, they're least performant in the area of flexibility. If I could have moved that green box further to the left, to recognize their flexibility, I would have. Once they're set, they're set. It's not critical, and they're not designed for flexibility. And if they were too flexible, we wouldn't pass all our SOX and audit requirements and would be valuing transactions differently. So by nature, they're highly scalable, not very flexible. Then we've got the ever flexible spreadsheet that scores very low for its enterprise capabilities. It's one off, right? But it's very flexible, so it lets me get my job done, right? So the answer obviously is, all right, well, what's needed then, right? If that's the two things we have and they're not cutting the bill, here's what's needed. The top right quadrant is where you always want to be in these kinds of rankings. What's needed is a mix of flexibility for dynamic on-the-fly modeling and what-if scenarios, yet enterprise robustness, security, repeatable, audit trails. I can see who's done what, right? Lots of people in the same environment at the same time, not their copy of the spreadsheet. What I'm talking about here is a dedicated enterprise level cost modeling environment that enables all these types of capabilities we agreed add value and drive profitability, right? And then, of course, data integration. This system being able to pull data from the ERP system or import data from a spreadsheet. In fact, a lot of them have spreadsheets as the front end to getting new data in. I've got a modeling environment. I can open a spreadsheet, key in some new data or calculate it, submit it to the model. So being able to get data from the ERP system and from this new imagined data, maybe spreadsheet environments or keyed directly into the modeling, that's where the system is of modern costing organizations. It's one of the ones, if you remember when I said what tools do you use today, and I said a dedicated enterprise level cost modeling system, that's the one that I was saying. People have these in place. I help people design and build them all the time as a living, so I know some people do have them, right? And then finally, if we leave tools behind, we come to data. If we have the rules embedded in the right tools, we now need the data to feed the model, and this is the good news, right? The very data that is most needed is data that's handled by finance every day, right? So we already have the bullets. We're ready to go to war. We've got the data. And with the investments in data warehouses, ERP systems, shop floor tracking, I find in most cases the data that's most important, it's readily available today. I wasn't able to say that 10 years ago at a similar presentation, but it's ready today. Let's take another quick poll question to keep you guys on your toes here. What is the data maturity level in your organization? And I've got these listed here from the least mature is at the top. Maybe I should have inverted them, but data aware is the least mature on this scale, and data driven is the most mature on this scale. Data aware says, hey, I've got a lot of data, but I have to I manually put it in spreadsheets, and I go pull it from this download, and I just kind of know where it is. I'm aware of the data, I make use of it, but it's not easy. Data proficient, hey, I get the same information over and over again. It's standardized, it's pretty good. Data savvy, that's getting a little bit better. Hey, I'm pulling data, maybe still in my spreadsheets, but I'm using it better than most people to make some good decisions. Or the most advanced, are we really data driven, right? Demanding the right data be available for any decision. And if there's no data, there's no decision until we get the data to support it. I'll give you guys just a minute to kind of rank where you think your company's data maturity is on this scale. Boy, lots of good questions coming in the Q&A. I really appreciate it. Rebecca, we're going to talk about fluctuating raw material prices. I like your finished comment. We use spreadsheets. I like it. Don't forget to hit the submit button, guys. That's how we see your poll answer on our side. So select an answer and then hit submit. And then I'm going to show you a survey of organizations that was done by the Association of Finance Professionals. These guys did this similar survey. Their categories were a little bit different, but it was about data usage. I wanted to make it a little more simple here. So I'll compare your answers to those of a widely surveyed audience. I saw somebody ask a question earlier while I'm waiting on the responses to come in about a particular survey and what the background of it. After this is over, when you get a copy of this slide deck, you'll find that anywhere I've quoted a survey done by somebody else, I gave them credit for it across the bottom of the slide. I put either the URL or the name of the article. So a quick Google search, you'll be able to find the details of that particular survey or whatever it was that I quoted. So you can go look it up. Okay, let's look at our answers. This is good, right? Not quite where we want to be one day, data driven, but good nonetheless. We're data aware, data proficient. That's good. You know what data proficient tells me is the data is available, right? You're not, you're not using it everywhere you could be using it, but it's available, and you're proficient at going to get it, getting the reports, downloading it, probably spreadsheets, and making some good use of it. So data proficient, it's not where you want to be on the scale. Certainly one day in a modern costing program, you want to get the data driven, but we are at least more mature than we could be. That's very good. You're going to score, by the way, very closely to what a larger audience scored, right? Look at this. 5% scored in that lowest category. We don't have regular access to data beyond the basic transactions. 18% said data is stored in a department or a line of business. So inside my department, I've got good data, but it's sort of siloed, right? That's another nuance that I didn't include in our poll just because of the time we have here. 40% said, hey, structured operational data, that's exactly the category you guys scored the highest in. And only 9% score themselves as real-time internal, external data that's driving decisions, right? So you're like the rest of the world in that we've got areas to grow when it comes to using the data. The good news is the data is sitting there waiting to be used. Probably the most exciting thing that I found in the area of data is what finance leaders are saying about real-time data. Many, many years ago, in some heavily process-controlled manufacturing environments, I worked on a series of real-time costing models, right? This was early 2000s when we were getting live feeds from process control equipment right into models. So like every 10 minutes, we could give a machine operator some sort of dollarized feedback, right? It was real exciting work at the time. I liked it. It was in the early days of data historians on the shop floor when a lot of data was being captured and you could rely on it. It hasn't really flourished in the way that I thought it would then, I think because of probably some inaccuracies in the data. You could walk by a flow meter and bump it with your fist and see a spike in consumption. So, and everybody kind of knew that. So an operator sitting out in, highly automated process control rooms weren't used to seeing dollar signs on their screens. They're looking at speeds and feet per minute and tonnage weight and stuff like that. So we'll see. But look at what Accenture found just recently. Most exciting, most finance leaders are saying real-time data. This survey believes it's critical to navigating disruptions. 99% said that, right? So think about that. Everybody, that's everybody, right? Not this one part, what do they think? Everybody said, hey, having real-time data is critical to navigating disruptions like we just came through, right? It's gonna happen, you gotta have it. And 68% believe the same data will not only be valuable in a critical time like disruption, but it's critical for improved business decision-making, right? It drives those high-value, profit-making decisions. So get ready. I think the traditional backwards-looking data, while it will always have its place, it's not the high-value data that's being used to drive decisions that improve profitability. So get ready for real-time data. But I'll tell you something about real-time data because of the work I told you earlier that I've done it before. I don't get excited when I see the presentation. I hear people talk about we're doing a virtual close. Every transaction we're closing. That's fine and it builds efficiencies in back office, but that's not really what I'm talking about here. Just because we have the data in real time, it doesn't mean we're going to book a transaction and then analyze it and then go change the price to our customer, right? I mean, that kind of real-time use, I'm talking about having access to real-time latest data and using it when it's appropriate. That's what I get excited about, right? Do I have access to it? Because what happens otherwise in traditional cost accounting is whatever the standard was last time I set it, that's what it's going to be, and we're going to use it in June when it was set back in December of last year. That's not real-time immediate data. Okay, I'm going to speed along here because I want to get through a handful of slides in less time than I really have left myself, but hopefully that's okay. What does the modern costing improve? How do we justify this? This was my third question. How do modern costing programs improve operation and commercial strategies, right? We know knowing the important and changing role cost is playing. How do I justify such an investment in a business? How do I go about what's the ROI? That's the final point that I'm going to discuss here. How does modern costing improve and contribute to our strategies, right? Here are some areas. Again, like before, I could have come up with a list of 10, and they're going to vary depending on your company, what type of company you are. But I think you can find value I'm going to show you 5 areas where I think most everybody can find value in at least 4 or 5 out of these, right? They are simulations and comparisons between different simulations. They are forward-looking cost planning, not once a year cost planning. Cost-based quoting is important for a lot of our custom manufacturers. Net profit and cost to serve analysis, and then vendor and supplier management. And I'm going to run through each of these kind of quickly, right? Simulations, I've talked a lot about already, being able to calculate using new sets of data that were imagined. Let me advance and show you a graphic of what I really think, how it really visualized, at least for a manufacturer, right? Notice here there are multiple versions of BOMs. That's the quantities used of which raw materials, raw material prices, selling prices. That's represented by price book here, and work center rates as an example. You could also have foreign exchange rates if that's important to you. You could have freight rates, labor rates, anything that's an input to calculating your costs. The idea here is that you can have multiple sets of data, multiple versions for all of those important data sets, and then randomly pick and choose. What if we use that version of the BOMs with this set of raw material prices, but at those commercial prices and these work center rates, because that's capacity driven? What is the cost of that? Being able to re-roll a specific set of volume and mix of products using a specific set of inputs and then compare all of those scenarios, this is exciting simulation modeling to me. That's one of the areas of high value. The next is going to be in cost planning, right? Using the latest information with regard to volume, mix, capacity, raw material prices, and even more, exchange rates, all the things we talked about, right? How many shifts we're going to run, what we're having to pay because of labor shortage, all these kinds of things let you begin each production period with the latest, most up-to-date cost projections, right? That could be weekly if you're a high-moving, high-volume commodity product, maybe weekly. Some of my food processors, poultry and meat processors, on a weekly basis, they're analyzing the cost from last week and planning for the following 2 weeks, right? So these projections help you plan cash flow, help you plan what raw materials we need to have on, plan the shifts that you're going to run, and most importantly, report the expected profit, right? Not what it said we were going to be when we set the plan back in January, and here we are in June or July, right? Another area of value is cost-based quoting, right? For those of you who create custom products and services for your clients, many of my automotive suppliers fall into this. The profit's made or lost before you even buy the raw materials to make the product. So you've got to have a process where you can invent the product, quote it to the customer, keep up with different version changes, right? And then finally, if you win the business and you make it, compare the actual cost to the quote to come full circle and see how you're performing. Net cost to serve is another one. I know I'm speeding along here at the end because I didn't leave myself quite enough time, but net profitability, well beyond cost to make. We're talking cost to deliver, cost to sell, cost to service and support long term. While they're smaller percentages of cost for manufacturers, they are absolute profit leakage monsters. I go from gross margin, which is positive, to a negative net profit very fast in this area. And then using data to manage vendors and suppliers. I have clients who have full cost models for products they don't even manufacture, their suppliers manufacture. And sometimes they have a better costing model than the suppliers that are actually making the products for them, right? So being able to use good cost insights to get that supplier data, that's where you need to be. All right, Sue, I am well out of time here. I didn't leave quite enough for the number of questions we have, but I don't have anywhere to be if anybody wants to stick around and we can keep the environment up. I'm going to throw it back to you, Sue, and let you sort of close us out here.
All righty. So I am going to ask you a couple of questions that we have received. Let's start with, where do companies struggle when it comes to redesigning their costing programs?
The number one area is the people, right? The processes are easy. You go blow the process up, walk through it, whiteboard it, put sticky paper all around the whole room, and the process are easy. It's the people, right? You struggle with the people because there's a lot of security or insecurity, as the case may be, tied up in these spreadsheets and these fiefdoms. You know, if you look at AR, AP, payroll, you know, any of the other accounting disciplines like cost accounting, all of those have become very automated. I mean, you got bots driving them today. It's not the case in costing. Costing takes, you know, sort of tribal knowledge to really pull it off, right? And with that comes people who have that tribal knowledge, and how do you get that into a scalable enterprise system? The place to focus is the people.
All right, I am going to ask one last question here. We will definitely get you all the questions, and Matthew will do his best to get back to all the attendees. So our question here is if you can really quickly explain the difference between product profitability analysis and pricing and revenue strategy. In a short sentence, if you can.
Yeah. Listen, you're talking about coming at the same thing from two different directions. Sometimes when you're setting your pricing strategy, you're ignoring costs. You've got to look at the market, where you want that product to fit in the in the band of pricing. And so there's a whole world of pricing strategy. Then once you set it, you say, okay, now how does that compare to the cost, and is there enough profit there? So that's one way to get to it, is to focus on the price strategy, irrespective of the cost. That's what I'm talking about pricing strategy. The other way is to come at it from the cost. All right, our target profitability is X. If this is our cost, we need to add X, and that has to be our product price. Can we sell at that price? So it's pricing strategy is using the market to drive pricing, and profitability strategy is using the cost plus the required margin to drive the pricing strategy.
Thank you so much, Matthew, for sharing all your knowledge and expertise with us. We are very appreciative that you have made time for IMA and our audience today. At this time, I'm just going to go over a couple of things. If you have attendees, if you have met the requirements for CPE credit, you will be able to access your certificate of completion today using one or the two methods. First, you may click on the CPE certificate icon before the webinar concludes. You will also receive an email later today where you can access your CPE certificate. Please save or print a copy of the certificate for your records. Please be sure to complete the session evaluation that should have popped up. If it didn't, then please click on the session evaluation icon at the bottom of your screen for access. Thanks all of you for your participation in the IMA Virtual Annual Conference and Expo today, and have a great rest of the day.
Sue, if I could add my same thanks to the audience. We had good attendance, and I appreciate it. Sorry I ran late at the end. Please visit me and my colleagues in the virtual showcase. We're going to be there in all the open windows. We'll have somebody there, and I'll be there myself. So I wish you luck in your costing journey, and thanks for your participation. Thank you, guys.